He was the most popular guy at the university, Ethan. Handsome, confident, rich, surrounded by friends and admiration. Until one night at a party after too many drinks, he lost a bet. The consequence? To propose to the cafeteria girl, Sophie. But what started as a simple joke ended up becoming the greatest lesson of his life. And now, who can he trust? Come with me. Let's find out together. The party had already gone off the rails. Loud music, bottles everywhere, people dancing on tables. Total chaos. That's how it always was at the parties thrown by the millionaire kids of Nova Haven University. Too much money, not enough sense. Ethan Crowell was right in the middle of it. Handsome, spoiled, and used to winning every bet, he was the kind of guy who never took anything seriously. That night, he was playing one of those stupid drinking games that only sound fun when everyone's already drunk. Whoever lost the truth or dare challenge had to accept a punishment chosen by the group. Jack, the loudest one in the crowd, was already laughing before Ethan even lost. "Go on, genius, answer it," he shouted, slurring his words. Ethan got it wrong. Completely wrong. The table burst out laughing. Jack stood up, wobbling slightly, and pointed at him. "All right, the loser of the night has to propose to the girl from the campus cafe." The laughter grew louder. "What?" Ethan asked, trying to understand over the noise. "That's right," Nate yelled. "You've got to pretend you're in love with her, gain her trust, and make her say yes to a marriage proposal." "And if I refuse?" Ethan asked. Jack raised his glass and smirked. "Then you buy each of us a yacht." The chant was unanimous. "Deal." Ethan laughed, half in disbelief. But surrounded by friends and his own ego, he could only say, "Fine. Deal." Her name came up between the jokes. Sophie, the girl from the cafeteria in the main building. She'd worked there since her first semester, serving coffee and sandwiches to rushing students. Everyone knew who she was, but few had ever really looked at her. She was polite, quiet, always in her apron with her hair tied back and a shy smile. The next morning, the hangover came with the memory of the bet. He tried to pretend he'd forgotten, but the group didn't let it go. "Did you ask the coffee princess yet?" one message said. "It's gonna be the wedding of the year," teased another. Out of options, Ethan showed up at the cafeteria for the first time. The place was small, with posters of promotions on the walls and the smell of strong coffee in the air. Sophie was behind the counter, taking orders. He stood there for a few seconds before walking up, reminding himself this was just a joke. "One cappuccino, please," he said, forcing a casual tone. She looked up briefly, jotted it down, and went back to work without much conversation. He tried to start small talk. "Do you study here too?" "I do," she said without looking up. Ethan kept pushing. "Strange, I've never seen you before." This time she met his eyes, calm but firm. "Maybe because you never look at who's behind the counter." He froze. No one ever talked to him like that. He grabbed the cup and left without saying a word. Later that day, he tried to bargain. "Can't we change the deal? I'll buy you guys dinner for a month." "A month?" Jack laughed. "We want yachts, not burgers." "Then double it, but forget this stupid bet," Ethan snapped, clearly annoyed. But it was too late. The group had already decided the bet was real and there was no way out. That night, they toasted like they'd won something. "First attempt complete," Jack shouted. "Now keep pretending, Romeo." Ethan rolled his eyes and forced a laugh. Deep down, he only wanted to find a way out of that situation without looking like a coward. At that point, there was nothing but ego, mockery, and the need to prove he could turn anything, even a cruel bet, into another trophy to show off to his friends. In the days that followed, Ethan tried to forget the bet, but his friends wouldn't let him. Every message in the group chat was a new jab. "Did you send flowers to your fiancé yet? Does the cafeteria staff call you Mr. Crowell now?" The teasing never stopped. And as always, Ethan's pride took over. He wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of saying he'd quit. On Tuesday morning, Ethan showed up at the cafeteria again, trying to look casual, like he just happened to be there. Sophie was behind the counter, focused, handing change to a student. Her stained apron contrasted with Ethan's expensive jacket, making him look completely out of place. He waited in line, rehearsing lines in his head. He needed to sound convincing, but had no idea where to start. When it was finally his turn, he forced a smile. "Double cappuccino," he said, tapping his card on the counter. "Sure," she replied in her usual tone. Awkward silence. "Do you always work alone here?" he asked. "Most of the time," she said without looking up from the coffee machine. "Must be exhausting." "It is, but it pays the bills." Ethan let out a short, awkward laugh. Sophie finished the order, placed the cup on the counter, and moved on to the next customer. He stood there for a few seconds, waiting for something, a smile, a look, anything, but nothing came. Outside, Jack texted him, "How's it going, Romeo? Won her heart yet?" Ethan just replied with an angry emoji. That afternoon, during class, he stared at his phone, rereading the group messages. Jack was sending screenshots, memes, and endless jokes about him. Ethan sighed, threw the phone on the desk, and decided that if he was going to do it, he'd do it right, just to shut them up. The next day, he went back to the cafeteria. This time, he waited until the rush was over and spoke more confidently. "Are you always this serious? Or is it just with me?" he asked, trying to sound playful. Sophie looked up for a moment. "That depends. People usually come here for coffee, not small talk." Her sarcasm caught him off guard. "Hit a nerve?" he teased. "No. I just like to save words for people who actually listen," she replied, handing him his change. Ethan took the cup and left, frustrated. The game wasn't going the way he planned. That night, the group met at the bar. Jack grinned. "So, how's the romance with the barista?" "She's impossible," Ethan said. "Rude, distant, won't even look at me." "Then make her look," Jack said. "Use what you've got, charm and money. No girl resists forever." Everyone laughed, but Ethan stayed quiet, staring at his drink. As much as he wanted to treat it like a joke, something about this felt different. It wasn't about charm, it was about pride. He couldn't stand losing, even when the loss was just someone ignoring him. The next day, he showed up again. This time, he left an absurdly large tip, enough to draw attention. Sophie looked at the money, then at him. "You made a mistake." "No, that's for you." "Then I'll give it back," she said, pushing the bills toward him. "I don't take tips from people who think they can buy a conversation." Ethan froze. He grabbed his coffee, swallowed hard, and walked out without a word. Later, in the group chat, his friends roared with laughter when he told them, "Wow, even your money doesn't work. She's a legend." Ethan replied with fake humor, pretending it was all fine. But deep down, it stung. Not because he cared, but because for the first time, someone wasn't reacting to him. And for Ethan Crowell, that was just another kind of defeat. After so many failures, Ethan realized that the direct approach wouldn't work. Sophie was different. She didn't react to teasing, wasn't impressed by his confidence, and seemed immune to the charm that always worked on every other girl. In the group chat, the taunts kept coming. "Giving up already, Prince? She beat you without even playing." Ethan replied sharply, "Relax, it's just a matter of time." But the truth was, he had no idea what to do. The next morning, while waiting for his coffee, he watched Sophie chatting with another student. They laughed about something trivial, and for the first time, Ethan noticed something he'd never paid attention to before. She actually listened. She didn't fake interest. She looked people in the eye, answered thoughtfully. But to him, that was still just an advantage to exploit. That night, Ethan came up with a plan. No more cheap flirting or over-the-top tips. He would be polite, helpful, the nice guy. All he needed was time for her to let her guard down and believe he was different. Then he'd win the bet. The next morning, he arrived earlier than usual. The cafeteria was still opening, and Sophie was setting up trays. "Good morning," he said, trying to sound casual. "We're not open yet," she replied without turning. "I know. I just came to grab a coffee, and maybe help carry some boxes." She paused and looked at him, suspicious. "Help? You? Yeah, why not?" Because that blazer doesn't look friendly with juice crates. Ethan laughed. I'll survive, he said, awkwardly lifting a box. Sophie shook her head but ended up accepting the help. Over the next few days he kept showing up. He'd wait for the rush to end, then make small talk, movies, exams, the coffee of the day. Slowly, she started answering more naturally, still short but without that same defensive tone. One afternoon, Ethan offered to deliver an order to another building, just to help. She found it odd but agreed. On the way, he snapped a photo of the tray and sent it to the group. Mission accomplished. Operation Romeo is still alive. His friends replied with laughing emojis and endless jokes. That night, they met at the bar again. So, Jack asked, got the barista's number yet? Not yet, Ethan said, taking a sip. But I'm close. You'd better hurry, Crowell. 6 months go fast. Relax. It's just another conquest. But when he got home, Ethan lay staring at the ceiling, feeling a strange discomfort he couldn't define. It wasn't guilt or empathy, just a nagging question. Why didn't she try to impress anyone? Why didn't she seem to care what people thought? The next morning, he decided to try something different. Instead of showing off, he pretended to be genuine. Sophie, can I ask you something? Sure. Don't you get tired of dealing with so many arrogant people around here? She smiled faintly. I've learned how to deal with it. And I've also learned that some people change once they stop pretending they're better than everyone else. Her answer lingered in his mind. In the group chat, the guys kept joking, unaware that, for the first time, Ethan didn't feel like laughing. The next few weeks felt different. Ethan didn't approach the bet with the same excitement anymore. He still went to the cafeteria, but now he didn't rehearse every line in his head. Sometimes he just showed up to get a coffee, for no real reason. Sophie had started treating him more naturally, though she still kept some distance. She no longer saw him as the spoiled rich kid trying to buy attention with ridiculous tips, but she also had no idea why he kept showing up. One morning, the place was packed and one of the student workers dropped a full tray of cups. Ethan, who was in line, immediately crouched down to help. I got it, he said before anyone else moved. Sophie looked surprised but said nothing. In the middle of the mess and the noise, coffee splashed all over his clothes, which made a few nearby students laugh quietly. It happens, she said, handing him a towel. Happens more to people trying to impress, right? He answered, laughing at himself. It was the first time they laughed together. Quick, small, but real. From that moment, something started to shift. Ethan began noticing things he'd never bothered to notice before. The way she treated everyone kindly. The quiet songs playing from a tiny radio while she wiped tables. The way she wrote little notes on people's coffee cups to make them smile. One afternoon, he showed up and found a note on his cup. Hoji sem gorjita. Okay? No tip today. Okay? He smiled, kept the cup, and without realizing it, thought about that note for the rest of the day. In the group chat, the pressure from his friends continued. So, when's the proposal? Jack teased. Calm down. She's not as easy as you think. Oh, falling in love already? Someone joked. I'm just finishing a bet. That's it, he replied. But it didn't sound the same anymore. He avoided talking about Sophie, almost like mentioning her out loud would make something too real, too fast. Over the next days, their moments got more casual. Sometimes he showed up just to talk. Sometimes she'd hand him a coffee on the house, and they'd trade quick jokes. One night, Ethan was leaving the library and saw Sophie sitting on a bench outside, reading and eating a sandwich. You're still here? He asked, walking over. Double shift. You tried to study. Didn't work. Happens to people who are used to paying other people to do their assignments, she said, laughing. He laughed with her. He sat down beside her, and for a while they just stayed there, listening to the distant sound of parties coming from other buildings. You're not scared of saying what you think, are you? He said. I used to try and pretend I didn't think that much, she answered. Didn't work out. Ethan stared ahead. He didn't understand why, but sitting there felt strangely calm. Calmer than any party, any bar, any night with his usual crowd. When he got home, his phone was full of messages. "Still alive, Romeo? Did she shut you down?" He deleted everything without replying. For the first time, he didn't feel like laughing. Things between them started changing slowly, almost without Ethan noticing. What used to be just teasing had become a habit. Every morning, he stopped by the cafeteria before class, even when he didn't want coffee. Sophie already knew. His cup was set aside, no sugar, just the way he liked it. "Addicted to coffee or to conversation?" she asked one morning, half joking. "To coffee," he replied too quickly. She smiled, and he hid his own smile by looking down. That week, Sophie mentioned she would be helping a friend at a local art fair. Ethan showed up by surprise, pretending he just happened to be passing by. When she saw him, she raised an eyebrow, suspicious. "Don't tell me you came to buy paintings." "I came for coffee, but it looks like they don't sell it here," he said, trying to sound casual. They walked together through the booths, talking about simple things. Music, trips, old shows. For the first time, Ethan completely forgot about the bet. He even forgot about the group chat. When he finally remembered, it was too late. Jack had already sent a message. "Heard you went to see the barista? Making progress, huh?" Ethan typed a short reply. Everything under control. But nothing was under control. He no longer knew what he was doing there. At the end of the fair, Sophie thanked him for keeping her company. "It was nice to have someone to talk to, even if you skipped class just for that." "I needed a break from all that," he said. "Sometimes it's good to be around someone normal." "Normal? That's a new one." They both laughed. On Saturday, Ethan's group threw a party at a luxury apartment downtown. Jack greeted him with a bottle in hand. "So, our Romeo's still alive? The cafeteria girl already in the wedding plans?" Ethan laughed, trying to hide his discomfort. "Almost. Just missing the kiss, right?" The group shouted in chorus. "Tonight's the night." Ethan drank more than he should have. When the music got louder and his head lighter, he texted Sophie. "You awake?" She replied a few minutes later. "Yeah." "Why? Want to take a walk?" She took a while but eventually agreed. They met at a park near campus. Sophie arrived in a simple coat, hair down, her expression half amused, half confused. "You're drunk." "A little, but happy," he said, laughing. They walked under the faint park lights. He talked too much, told exaggerated stories, tried to seem relaxed, but every word came out awkward. Sophie, even laughing, seemed a little wary. "You know what I think?" she said. "You're good at hiding behind your jokes. And you're good at making me nervous." Before she could answer, he pulled her in and kissed her. The kiss that was supposed to be just part of a bet came out differently. It wasn't quick or cold. It was slow, unexpected, filled with something he couldn't explain. For a moment, he forgot about the bet, the drinks, his friends, everything. Sophie didn't move, surprised, but she didn't pull away either. There was a strange mix of confusion and surrender in that kiss, the kind that changes something, even if no one really understands what. When they pulled apart, Ethan stood still, breathing heavily, looking at her. "Good night, Ethan," she said simply, then walked away. He stood there for a few seconds, frozen, then laughed nervously to himself, not knowing what to feel. Back home, still dizzy, he grabbed his phone and typed, "Why is your kiss so good?" Sophie read the message while lying in bed. She read it again and again. She didn't reply, but she smiled to herself, trying to understand what was happening, and wondering if, maybe, it could actually be real. The next morning, Sophie woke up still thinking about the message. She opened her phone, reread the words, "Why is your kiss so good?" and laughed to herself. It was absurd. Ethan Crowell, the most popular guy at the university, had texted her, and he was complimenting their kiss. For a moment, she thought about replying, but the fear of sounding too excited made her type only a simple, "Good morning." He saw it within seconds. "Good morning," he replied. "That's it. For someone who texted drunk, that's already pretty good," she typed, adding a laughing emoji. Ethan laughed to himself, sitting on his bed, still a bit dizzy. The conversation stayed light, funny, almost natural. Throughout the day, they texted about everything: classes, professors, shows. Neither of them mentioned the kiss, but between the lines, it was clear something had changed. That week, Sophie casually mentioned she had a rare library book, the exact one Ethan needed for a late paper. "Really?" he asked. "Can I borrow it?" "You can. But only if you come get it yourself." Late that afternoon, Ethan showed up in front of her building. Sophie came down with the book in her hands, but the conversation stretched out. They stood on the sidewalk, talking about random things, as if neither wanted to say goodbye. The sun was going down and the air was getting cooler. "Want to come up for a bit?" she asked without thinking. "I can show you my record collection." "Records? Like vinyl?" "Like vinyl," she said, smiling. Her apartment was small, filled with stacked books and plants by the windows. An old record player played a soft tune, and colorful album covers were scattered across the floor. Ethan looked around, impressed. "This is amazing," he said, picking up a record. "I didn't think anyone still listened to these." "Well, I like old things," she said. "They tend to last longer." They sat on the floor, side by side. Sophie placed a record on the player. "This one's from the 80s. My mom loved it." Ethan stayed silent for a few seconds, watching how her face lit up as she talked. "You look like a different person when you talk about music." "That's because music's the only thing that always understands me," she said, laughing. "What about you? Do you have something like that?" He hesitated. "Maybe, but it's kind of silly." She looked at him curiously, but he changed the subject. The conversation went on. They laughed, shared stories, talked about everything, and time just slipped away. The record stopped playing, and only the faint sound of the street filled the silence. "Sophie," he started, not really knowing what he wanted to say. She looked at him. He leaned closer and kissed her again. This time there was no alcohol, no bet, no confusion. It was a calm, conscious kiss, full of truth. The kind of kiss that happens when words aren't enough anymore. When they pulled apart, they just stayed there, breathing the same air. "I should go," he said softly. "I know," she replied, but neither of them moved for a few seconds. That night, Ethan went home with his heart racing. He couldn't stop thinking about her scent, the music, her smile. He felt a mix of fear and excitement. And for the first time, he didn't want to tell his friends anything. The next day, Sophie got a message from him. "Can I see you today?" She hesitated. "Depends. For coffee or for conversation?" "For anything that doesn't involve coffee." She laughed and replied, "All right, where do we meet?" He answered without thinking, "Then come to my place." This time, he would be the one to reveal a side no one else had ever seen. The gate opened slowly, revealing a house that looked more like a piece of modern art. A glass facade, a perfectly trimmed garden, and 3 sports cars lined up at the entrance, like sculptures. Sophie observed everything with curiosity. There was luxury in every detail, but a different kind of luxury. Quiet, almost lonely. Inside, the contrast was even greater. The space was wide, with straight lines, white walls, and furniture in neutral tones. No sign of exaggerated ostentation, just unfinished paintings, stacked books, and a guitar leaning near the window. It looked less like a house and more like a hideaway. Ethan greeted her naturally, offering her water and showing the place without hurry. Sophie walked slowly, looking at the paintings scattered along the walls. They were bold, full of color and movement, nothing like the arrogant guy she thought she knew. "You paint?" she asked, surprised. Ethan shrugged. "When I have time. My dad thinks it's a waste." She laughed, running her fingers near one of the canvases without touching it. "Then keep wasting time. This is amazing." As she walked through the rooms, Sophie noticed small fragments of his life scattered around. Sketches, drawings, old photos. Nothing matched the stereotype of the arrogant boy she once imagined. In the bedroom, simplicity stood out. The bed was neatly made, curtains open, sunlight coming in softly. And on the pillow, a small teddy bear with a red ribbon around its neck. The contrast was almost poetic. The afternoon went by between laughter, confessions, and comfortable silences. It felt like they always had another topic, another story, another curiosity to share. When the sun began to set, the golden light filtered through the glass and filled the room with a calm, almost intimate glow. "Want to watch a movie?" he asked. She nodded, and they both settled on his bed, facing a television almost the size of a cinema screen. Ethan quietly moved the teddy bear aside, almost trying to hide it under a pillow. Halfway through the movie, Sophie realized Ethan was no longer paying attention. He was leaning back, his gaze distant, until sleep took over. Almost unconsciously, he reached for the teddy bear, pulling it close and holding it tightly as he drifted into deep sleep. Sophie watched the scene in silence. She found it so sweet that she couldn't help but smile. She wanted to keep that moment forever. She picked up her phone, turned on the camera, and captured the image. A simple, almost tender photo. Moments later, the sound of the movie faded into the background. Sophie fell asleep too. Outside, night took over the house. And in the silence, the soft flash of that photo kept a secret that, later, would change everything. The next morning, Sophie woke up before him. The house was still silent, filled with soft morning light. Ethan was fast asleep, the teddy bear still in his arms. For a moment, she simply watched him. He looked nothing like the arrogant guy from university. There was a calmness in him she had never seen before. She got up quietly, grabbed her coat, and left without making a sound. On her way home, she looked at the photo on her phone and smiled. It was a simple image, but it carried something special. A glimpse of a side no one would ever imagine Ethan Crowell had. In the following days, they kept seeing each other. Coffee, laughter, long conversations that never seemed to end. Ethan was different, lighter, more present. Sophie felt she could trust him. She started to believe that maybe what she was feeling was real. But the truth has its own timing, and it never asks for permission to appear. One ordinary afternoon, Sophie arrived at the university and noticed strange looks. Quiet laughs, whispers, glances exchanged behind her back. Something was wrong. She walked toward the cafeteria, her stomach tightening. When she checked her phone, her heart froze. Someone had shared an old video in the students' group chat. Ethan, laughing with his friends, drunk at a party. His voice was unmistakable. "If I lose, I'll marry the cafeteria girl." The laughter of his friends echoed in the background. "I want to be at the wedding," someone shouted. Sophie stood still. The floor could have collapsed beneath her feet. Suddenly, everything made sense. The visits, the messages, the sudden interest. It had all been a bet. She left the cafeteria without looking at anyone. Her hands were shaking, her chest burning. She felt ridiculous, betrayed, exposed. The worst part wasn't the video. It was that she had believed in him. At home, the tears came without warning. Her friends tried to comfort her, but Sophie could barely speak. Anger began to replace the pain. Shame turned into fuel. And through the sobs, she managed to say only one sentence. "He's going to regret it." That night, Sophie opened her photo gallery. The picture was there, Ethan sleeping, holding the teddy bear with the red ribbon. The perfect symbol of the vulnerability he would never want anyone to see. Her friends hesitated. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes," she said firmly. "This is how he'll understand what it feels like to be humiliated." The next morning, the entire campus was talking. The photo was everywhere, on group chats, on screens, on digital boards. "The millionaire bad boy who sleeps with a teddy bear." The caption spread like wildfire. Ethan arrived at the university, unaware of what was coming. As soon as he walked in, the looks began. Stifled laughter, whispered comments, phones pointed his way. When he saw the image, his face went pale. Sophie stood by the stairs, watching. There was no anger in her eyes anymore, only disappointment. For a brief second, he thought about going to her, explaining, saying something, anything. But she turned her back and walked away. Ethan stayed there, motionless, feeling the same humiliation he had once made others feel. For the first time, the boy who thought he could do anything had nothing to say. The bet was over, but the consequences were only beginning. The following days were a nightmare. Ethan had become the university's latest joke. The video, the bet, the photo, everything had blended into whispers and laughter across the halls. The same friends who once surrounded him were now laughing at his expense. "Dude, you sleep with a teddy bear?" Jack laughed. "The rich boy with a soft heart. That's new," mocked another. Ethan tried to laugh along, but his voice faltered. For the first time, he realized that none of them actually cared. Their friendship only existed when there were parties, money, and stupid games to play. That night, the silence of his house was deafening. He sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone. Dozens of messages, all jokes, all laughter. Not a single one asked how he was doing. His gaze fell on the teddy bear resting on the pillow. The little red ribbon seemed to glow faintly in the dark, as if watching him back. He thought of his mother, of the stories she used to tell him before bed, of how she'd say that when people laughed at him, he should laugh too, but never lose his kindness. And that's when he realized how far he'd drifted from her words. He picked up the bear and held it tightly against his chest. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered, voice trembling. He stayed like that for a long time, until the sound of a car outside brought him back to himself. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed his keys and left. He drove aimlessly through empty streets, the lights reflecting on the windshield like ghosts of the past. When he finally stopped, he realized where he was, right in front of Sophie's house. Leaning against the hood of his car, teddy bear in hand, he waited. He didn't know what he was going to say, only that he needed to see her. Minutes later, Sophie turned the corner, coming home from work. When she saw him, she froze. There he was, the same boy but stripped of arrogance. He looked human. She hesitated, then walked closer. "What are you doing here?" she asked carefully. He took a slow breath. "Waiting for you." Sophie crossed her arms, defensive. "For what? Another game?" "No," his voice broke. "To apologize." Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable. Then Ethan lifted the teddy bear slightly. "This bear, it was my mother's gift. She died when I was 7. It's the only thing I have left of her." He paused, his eyes distant. "She was the only person who really listened to me. And when I met you, I felt that again. At first it was a lie, but later it wasn't." Sophie looked away, holding back tears. "You made me believe in something that wasn't real." "I know," he said quietly. "And if I could erase it, I would. But I came here to say I'm sorry, and that I'd change everything if I could." For a moment, she didn't respond. The air between them was heavy with everything unsaid. "I don't know if I can believe you, Ethan," she whispered. "I don't expect you to," he said softly. "I just needed you to know that what I felt was real." Their eyes met, and something shifted. The anger was gone, replaced by something quieter, almost fragile. Sophie turned toward the house. Ethan stayed where he was, leaning against the car, the teddy bear with the red ribbon clutched in his hands. As she entered, she glanced back through the window. He was still there, motionless, silent, holding the bear that somehow tied his past to everything that might still be mended. Time passed in silence. The following weeks felt like a pause between what once was and what could still be. Ethan disappeared from campus. Sophie went back to her routine, but nothing felt the same. The smell of coffee, the hiss of the espresso machine, even the familiar hallways carried memories she tried to ignore. One Saturday afternoon, the university was hosting its annual charity fair. The same event where the wealthy students liked to act generous for a day. Sophie was helping at a donation booth when she heard whispers ripple through the crowd. "He's back. Crowell's here." Ethan was crossing the courtyard. There was no trace of arrogance now. His hair messy, his face calm, and in his hands, the same teddy bear with the red ribbon. People turned to look, some laughing, others simply curious. But he didn't flinch. He walked straight to the small stage in the center, took a deep breath, and asked for the microphone. The coordinator hesitated, but handed it over. The crowd fell silent. "I know most of you already know who I am," Ethan began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. And yeah, I've seen the jokes, the millionaire with the teddy bear. And honestly, I deserved it. A few laughs broke the quiet, but he went on. I was arrogant. I made someone's life into a game, and that's something I'll regret for a long time. But that same person, she taught me about respect and honesty and what it means to actually care about someone. Sophie stood frozen, watching from a distance, her chest tightening with every word. I lost everything that mattered trying to impress people who never cared about me, he said, scanning the crowd. But somewhere in that mess, I found someone who did, someone who really listened. And when I realized what she meant to me, it was already too late. He stepped down from the stage and walked slowly through the crowd. Students parted, making room, until he stopped in front of Sophie. Ethan lifted the teddy bear in his hands. I didn't come here to ask you to take me back, he said softly, voice shaking. I came to tell you that I've changed, that I finally understand the value of what I ruined. And if you can ever forgive me, I'd like the chance to start again. For real this time. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. The scene was quiet, heavy, and raw. Ethan held the teddy bear carefully, like something fragile. She took a slow step forward. You humiliated me in front of everyone, Ethan, she said, her voice trembling. But now, watching you admit it here in front of them all, I think it's the first time I've ever really seen you. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two people changed by everything they'd broken. Finally, Sophie reached out and touched the teddy bear. Maybe we can start over, without bets this time. Ethan smiled, his eyes glistening. No more bets. The crowd, silent until then, began to applaud. Some were moved, others just surprised. And amid the noise, Sophie and Ethan embraced. Not a perfect ending, but a promise to try again. As the sun dipped behind the university buildings, the red ribbon on the teddy bear swayed gently between them. A quiet reminder that real love is born not from perfection, but from vulnerability. And you? Would you forgive Ethan? Tell us in the comments what you would have done in Sophie's place. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel for more stories. See you in the next one.